Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Africa. Good morning, the world. And welcome to the morning brief. We're right here again doing what you have asked us to come and do. But thank you for joining us on the show today. I'm Anne Nwawadu.
Yes, indeed. We bring the power of the woman to the show this morning. So wherever you're watching us from, America, the United Kingdom, in Asia, in Nigeria or in Africa, just get set for we're going to unfold for you everything that you need to make your morning perfect. Yes, Kade is wondering what's going to happen. Yes.
I like when Kade nods because I know he's about to say something.
Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
So the plan is to shock them. They want me to say something, but I won't say something.
What?
Good morning. Welcome to Lagos. We're live for you in the commercial capital of Nigeria. I'm Kayode Okikulu. Yes, I bring the man power on the show this morning, but essentially speaks to why we need to work together, you know, man, woman, all of us. Let's work together. So I'm not going to enter that fight this morning because I'm obviously outnumbered. When Jeff is back, we'll resume the, well, not hostilities, the friendly hostilities.
All right, so talking about work, actually, I named yesterday Thoughtful Tuesday, right? So today I'll name it Wealthy Tuesday, Wealthy Wednesday, because we're all out to make money, right? And very soon you all will be driving to your places of work, or maybe you're self-employed, you're doing it at home, wherever it is you're doing it, make sure you're doing it right. So as we all try to make money and try to survive, especially in this harsh economy, make sure you're doing things right. That's what I just woke up to think, to tell you about today. And I just hope that, because a lot of things have been going on, especially before the show, we talked about the case of a rape with the policeman who's been just been arrested, detained. And when you think about things and crime, especially against women, we started this show by talking about the power of women and how we should also respect women. I think this should go a long way in sending a strong message also in working together, especially if you're a man, a boy, raising the boys well to know how to respect women. It's very touchy, it's a very sensitive issue. So when we feel this way, you know that we're serious this time. I don't know, Kayode, we started discussing this before the show, and it just made me emotional.
A really sad incident. A policeman allegedly raping a 17-year-old girl at the area H Command Ogudu. Well, the spokesperson of the police in Lagos, Benjamin Hundeyin, had said that, well, they're not shielding this policeman, and he's since been detained. Just to let you know that we're following that particular story. It leaves a very terrible taste in the mouth. There's been a lot of uproar on and off social media about this, and we promise you that we're not keeping our eyes off this. We'll follow this, because, I mean, we'll see how this turns out, but definitely, as I said earlier on, it just leaves a bad taste in the mouth. You can't expect to get protection from the police, and what you get is otherwise. In fact, defilement in this case, this alleged case. So we're keeping our eyes on this and ensure that justice is served whichever way. So just to give you an insight into some of the things that also bug us as journalists, I mean, we see this report and the human side just goes, no, 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 not again, not again.
Well, it's sad for me as well. And, you know, the 17-year-old who was allegedly raped was quoted as saying that on June the 29th, the officer called her mom to say that he has been able to arrest the person who stole her phone, because the reason they went to the police station in the first place was to report phone theft, and the officer had promised to help her retrieve her phone. And, you know, afterwards, instead of getting justice for the victim, she became a victim twice over with the report of an alleged rape. I just want to say that it speaks to, if this is true and the investigation goes through and he's convicted, it speaks to the character of officers, you know, in our commands, particularly those who are tasked with the function of assisting the vulnerable. And this is a sexual and gender-based crime if it is proven true. It also speaks to a question mark on how far or how much training is going into officers in the gender unit and the family desk units that are tasked with the functions of investigating sexual and gender-based crime. And I was listening to the Minister of Women Affairs the other day on one of our sister programs, and she talked relentlessly about how there are no funds in the Ministry of Women Affairs, and what is available is being spent on distribution of bags to students in schools. There must be funding for the prosecution of crimes relating to sexual and gender-based offenses. There are so many non-governmental organizations who are receiving cases time and again, and they are seriously underfunded. There are very few sexual assault and referral centers available to help such victims. And there are cases growing every day. Some are reported, but many go unreported. And if this officer is found guilty, he should go down as yet again one officer who is a danger to many young and vulnerable persons out there, particularly women, and his name should go into the sexual offenders list.
Very true. I mean, when we talk about issues like this, we know that we also say well done to those police officers who go out there and do their very best in protecting the lives and property of citizens. But for those who are not doing that, I hope that the laws and everything around protecting lives and property would actually catch up with them. And when we saw that report, a lot of people incidentally started reporting their own personal cases. So under that report, we saw lots of comments coming about, oh, I was also a victim, I was this. So it shows you how many are not even actually reported. But in all, we hope that justice is served and we get to have a safer nation. And now we talk about other things that we have on the show. When you hear the word Japa, only one thing comes to your mind. It is leaving everything behind and, of course, traveling to seek what some people have termed greener pastures abroad. Well, on the show today, we'll link the Japa syndrome to health as we discuss the professionals drawn from various arms of the health sector.
And that's not all. Indeed, we'll be looking at the impact of this one on the health sector, the economy of the people, of the country and its people. Where did we get it wrong? And what should we be doing as a nation to get it right?
Absolutely. Then, guess what? We'll turn our attention to the latest development with the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics and the 15-day ultimatum given to public polytechnic authorities to suspend the contentious scheme of service by the National Board of Technical Education. We'll also look closely at aspects that allegedly deepen the discrimination against holders of higher national diploma. We have millions of Nigerians, young Nigerians, who are in this category, and this is a very, very major one that I'll definitely be getting into today.
Yes, it's also a sensitive one, especially when it comes to discrimination against HND holders. And we'll also be having experts talk about, why this? Was that how it began when we all had this idea of HND and university degree? But we'll talk about all of that in just a moment. Remember, you can join us on our WhatsApp page, WhatsApp handle. Chikaide would always say it's not my number, it's not Bukala's number, but you see the number on your screen. Please get to us and talk to us about what you think and all the topics we have on the show today. We'll be right back. It's the Morning Brief. All right. right, here we have to give you all the top stories and what you have been talking about. I will begin in the health sector. And the Director General of the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, Dr. Jide Idris, has confirmed that 103 people have so far died from the latest cholera outbreak in Nigeria. And that figure was made at a media briefing in Abuja. Dr. Idris, who made this known, also confirmed that over 3,000 cases have been recorded across 34 states and the FCT in 187 local government areas of the country.
When we see an unusual increase in number of cases, it's a trigger. And that's the trigger we got on, I think, week 24 of this year. That's where we saw that surge. And since then, we've been monitoring these cases. And what we're saying is that from that time up till now, there's a gradual decline in case fatality rate. With the ongoing rainy season, there's an increased risk of mosquito-borne diseases such as malaria, yellow fever, dengue fever, and other respiratory-related illnesses such as cold, flu, and COVID. Yellow fever is called a viral hemorrhagic disease transmitted by infected mosquitoes. The incubation period, at the time of infection to expression of symptoms, is usually between 3 and 6 days. The NCDC continues to monitor reports of yellow fever cases in Nigeria all year round. As a result of the current rainy season, we are also observing an increase in suspected cases.
The National Council on Nutrition, chaired by Vice President Kashim Shettima, has approved new measures to combat malnutrition and food insecurity in the country. The council gave this approval at its meeting held at the Presidential Villa in Abuja, where the Vice President called for active involvement of all stakeholders. Among those measures approved by the council are the establishment of a national dashboard, all to provide better oversight and cooperation of nutrition-related initiatives across Nigeria. Well, according to the Vice President, the administration of President Bola Tinubu is committed to working with development partners, private sector players, and state governments towards providing lasting solutions to the economic challenges confronting the nation. At that meeting, too, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wali Edu, said the Council also provided a template for monitoring implementation of interventions by the federal government to address food insecurity in Nigeria.
In all that we discussed today, the urgency of action was emphasized, and we launched, I can say, a template which will lead to very, very careful and very, very precise monitoring of implementation. As we all know, often some of these programs fall down at the level of implementation, so extra effort and extra attention is being paid to make sure that what is planned, what is promised, is faithfully implemented. And we are sure that with these interventions, led very powerfully by the Vice President, and a commitment by him to personally ensure that we reach the state governors for their own and show them where they need to intervene based on the data and based on the details that have been drawn up by Ministry of Health and Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, with the political will, not just at the federal level, but at the state level, we will decisively deal with food inflation and the availability of food, the affordability of food, and of course, the care for our young ones and our expectant mothers through adequate nutrition and diet support.
The Kuka Center is asking political party executives to deepen internal democracy and hold politicians elected on their platforms to account. At a roundtable hosted by the Kuka Center, the matter of how internal democracy impacts good governance featured prominently, even as political party representatives blame weak institutions for bad governance in the country. And talking about politics, the Rivers State House of Assembly, led by Victor Kojumbo, has condemned the resolution by the Martin Amawele-led House, which barred Governor Siminalayi Fubara from spending public funds. Mr. Kojumbo, who stated this in an opening remark during plenary, said that what Martin Amawele and 24 others, whom he described as former members of the House, did was unfounded and without validity. He insists that Mr. Martin Amawele and 24 others are not members of the Assembly, following their defection from the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, to the All Progressives Congress, the APC, in December 2023.
The recognized 10th River State House of Assembly is the one led by Right Honorable Victor Kojumbo. I once again call on the Independent National Electoral Commission to expedite preparations towards the conduct of by-elections to fill the vacant seats created by the River State House of Assembly by the defection of Martins Amehule and 24 others. Declare a state of public health emergency on the practice of open defecation and prohibiting its practice in the state.
Let's head to Kano State, where the governor of the state, Abba Yusuf, has signed the Kano Emirate Council Establishment Bill 2024 into law. Now, that bill provides for the creation of 3 second-class emirs in Rano, Karaye, and Gaya. Staying in Kano, the state government has filed fresh charges against the former governor Abdullahi Ganduje alongside his former commissioner for justice Musa Abdullahi Lawan. While the new charges are coming shortly after the previous trial commenced in absentia against Mr. Ganduje. However, the court is yet to set a date for the commencement of that trial. This latest legal action follows a series of legal challenges faced by Mr. Ganduje and his associates. But recently, the court entered a not guilty plea for Mr. Ganduje, his wife Hafsat Umar, and other defendants in absentia on an 8-count charge, which includes allegations of bribery, misappropriation, and diversion of public funds amounting to billions of naira. And staying with the judicial matters, Justice Hamza Mazu of the Federal Capital Territory High Court Abuja has rejected an application by former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, for permission to travel to the United Kingdom for follow-up on medical checkup. But Justice Mazu, in a ruling, held, among other things, that Mr. Emefiele failed to supply sufficient materials to show that the medical trip was essential and unavoidable. Justice Mazu found out that while Mr. Emefiele claimed there was an invitation for him to travel to the UK for medical attention, he failed to tender a copy of the said invitation in court. The judge also found out that Mr. Emefiele did not show that his ailments could not be attended to in Nigeria. Justice Mazu held that Mr. Emefiele is facing charges in 3 other courts. Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal in Abuja has dismissed the appeal filed by the People's Democratic Party and its governorship candidate Samuel Anyanwu, challenging the decision of the Imo State Tribunal, which affirmed the election of Governor Hope Uzodinma as the authentic governor of Imo State. The court held that the appeal lacked merit, having resolved all issues formulated against the appellants in the suit. In the same vein, the appellate court dismissed the appeal of the Labour Party and its candidate, Mr. Achonu Nneji, and that of the Allied People's Movement for also lacking in merit. The appellants, who were dissatisfied with this tribunal judgment, had approached the Court of Appeal on grounds that 11 November 2023 election was invalid by reason of non-compliance with the provision of the Electoral Act. And away from the courts now, the Plateau State, an investigative panel set up by the federal government on the collapsed 2-story building in Jos, the Jos school there, which left 22 people dead, has released a preliminary report on the incident. Well, the Director General, Nigerian Building and Road Research Institute, Samson Duna, told journalists that the panel, headed by the building department at the University of Jos, revealed that the physical observation of that building looked distressed and that weak materials were actually used used for building it. The report resolved that the quality of concrete used for the two-story structure was in doubt, as there was no boundary between the concrete and the steel reinforcement. It also adds that the slab reinforcement anchorage provided was inadequate. And in the world of business, it's a historic moment for Nigeria. The country has launched a preferential trade, which is actually part of the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA. Well, according to the National Coordinator Nigeria Coordination Office, Mr. Olusegun Awolowo, the milestone event is a watershed moment for Nigeria and, of course, for Africa, which could lead to less dependence on the US dollar for trade. He made the comments at the inaugural shipment ceremony under the Guided Trade Initiative, the GTI, at the Apapa port in Lagos. Nigeria is actually part of African countries that signed the AfCFTA agreement back in July 7th, 2019. Outside our shores, one person has been shot dead as anti-government protesters return to the streets of Kenya, calling for President William Ruto to resign. A crowd carried the body of the demonstrator back to a nearby police station in the capital, Nairobi, but the police has not commented on the man's death. In the world of sports, says welcome home. Waving flags dressed in Spain's red and yellow colors, tens of thousands of people greeted the new European champions in a square after the open-top bus parade went through Madrid. Well, in Madrid's iconic Cibeles Square, fans gathered to celebrate Spain's record-setting fourth European championship, with the players leading the crowd to victory. And of course, you expected the chants were coming on the stage. Those are the top stories we have for you today. And talking about coming on stage, I know Kayode Kikeli joins me now to talk about some of the main stories we've been discussing, and we have been seeing your feedback also, so that's what we will be taking right now. So what do you have for us?
Well, quite a number of issues really that you have been responding to, and I think we'll start with this cherry one, particularly for core members, right? And I know a lot of people are asking, what about us? But let's focus on the core members for a moment. And that's the fact that the Lagos state government has actually given 100,000 naira each to Lagos Batch B Stream 1 core members. So,
and you begin to ask, why didn't this happen in our own time?
So this is a tricky thing. If you adjust for inflation, forex and all of that, a lot of people were maybe earning not as much as that, but something within that range at the time they served. So a lot of people thought, okay, it's only fair that these people get some sort of markup, but 100,000 naira for these ones, some sort of largesse. So we're starting off with some of the comments that you've been putting on this one.
Bello Abdul-Majid says that this is how you encourage the youth corps members, as we appreciate your contribution.
Right. Before that, we had Madewale Damilare saying that this is actually laudable, saying that he or she is happy for them. So I imagine that end of the month will be much happier for core members. And people are asking, can we just replicate this across the states? Can we see other states match up? Again, understanding the position, the situation of Lagos, it's understanding. So how many states are willing to take on this challenge?
We're still dealing with the national minimum wage, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So democracy must survive from Pyramid says that the more reason they will want to serve in Lagos at all costs. So this means that all core members should be coming to please. Lagos is already it's already overcrowded.
Well, Organic Hewa says expect more of such from various quarters. And this user points to something quite tricky. He says, as there's a threat of nationwide protests, even state governors will soon start paying student bursary. Again, these are things that should be done normally without some sort of coercion or what have you, but we'll see how that plays out.
All right, Obanowo Leo says that well done, Governor. You are indeed a comrade. This is highly commendable.
So we say again, what state is going to be taking up this challenge next? As soon as another state takes up that challenge, or at least comes through with something similar, we'll let you know. But let's turn our attention to last week's judgment, granting local government's autonomy in the real sense of it. That's the Supreme Court judgment. So there have been a series of reactions. The latest we're bringing to you is from the National Assembly. And this now goes all the way to the conduct of elections, local government elections. And we understand that there may be some thinking to actually amend the 1999 Constitution such that INEC, that's the federal electoral body, will be the one to conduct local government elections and not the state electoral bodies. So Ayo Omar Jao has this first one saying, this will be very good to hear. Well, you're hearing it, so I imagine this will now be good to see. It will surely aim to define the scope of authority and jurisdiction of each level of government to prevent conflict and ensure efficient governance.
All right, Alabi Ayodeji also says that this will be a great progress to strengthen our democracy. Local government chairmen will no longer be accountable to the governors, but the electorates, just as the governors are not accountable to the president. Local government chairmen are the easiest to vote out, so they will want to perform.
There you go. Prosper Calabar is next. And this user adds another layer to this. Says they should also ensure that it's categorically stated that local government elections will be conducted alongside governorship elections on the same day. Because what we've seen is that the timetable for local government elections is really not set in cast in stone. It could be any time or no time at all. It says that way we can be sure of the independence of local government, at least to some extent.
All right, Oluke says that states should do their thing like in other democracies, just ensure the process is transparent and difficult to manipulate. We should be supporting devolution of power and not the opposite, so they should start working on state police instead.
There you go. So we'll see again how this one plays out, particularly with this suggestion. But let's turn our attention to the literally never-ending drama in Rivers State. Last week, the Martin Amewule-led assembly gave the governor a 7-day ultimatum to present a budget before then. Else, well, they were going to take action. And just on Monday, they took action and suspended spending in that budget. But guess what? The Oko Jumbo-led lawmakers have now said, you know what, Governor Fubara, go ahead.
Spend the money.
Spend that money. So the confusion continues, really, because there have been court decisions on, well, let's say which one is legitimate or otherwise. But take a look at what Lucky Man says. Says that 1 year is gone already, add a few months to that, and the back and forth continues. All because of few individuals' interest over the interests of Rivers people, it says.
You know, we're just talking about how it's over 1 year, just yesterday, and what has been done in Rivers State is just being all the back and forth from day one till this very moment. So I think sometimes we should also be considerate and look at how to govern the state instead of the back and forth. And this is coming from Okoben. It says that I don't know what the elders in Rivers State are doing with all this fire. At the end of the day, these politicians are comfortable for life. It is the people of Rivers State who are actually suffering.
There you go. That's not all we have for you, right? While you can keep your comments coming in #CTV Morning Brief or on WhatsApp, we're going to take them. But just before that, let's leave you with this final one that has been quite, contentious as well. And it's the fact that the Lagos state government has shut down the market called Oja Oba Market at Ilepo over what it described as very poor sanitary conditions. And some tie that again to the current cholera outbreak. Over 100 people have died as a result of this. So there's that. Some other people say, well, this is their livelihood. Why sort of take it away from them temporarily? So the debate is ongoing. So this first one, Anne,
Damilario Dulesi says that this happens almost every time. Ile Epo Market and the environment get closed at least once a year over sanitation. Could it be that there is no solution to the dirtiness, or there is something else that we do not know?
Yeah, I think that's something we have to pay attention to, and it just naturally brings up the conversation around local government. Do you know that local governments are responsible for markets, for sanitation, or at least they are meant to be responsible? So when these issues are raised, we should look at local governments and ask them, what are you doing about sanitation, the markets, and the rest? So big debate ongoing right now. I would like to hear your thoughts. But that's all we'll take, at least for now, on your comments.
All right, so but keep those comments coming, definitely. Before the show ends, we also have another segment where we'll be talking about all that we've discussed. So please stay on the show, watch with us, do this with us, because we'll also be hearing from you. Thank you so very much for all those comments that you have sent in. We'll take another moment right now, and we'll be right back on the Morning Brief. So stay with us. Welcome back to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. And so for good reason, we turn our attention to the health sector. You know what they say, health is wealth. And it goes without saying that a nation is as healthy as its health sector. So what's the impact of the Japa syndrome on different aspects of Nigeria's health sector, be it for the doctors, nurses, medical, laboratory scientists. So this morning we have for you a complete panel, and we're going to be, peeping into the world of our medical practitioners. To help us with this conversation, we have joining us this morning Dr. Folashade Ali. She's a consultant cardiologist and Chief Medical Director, Lagos Executive Cardiovascular Center. She joins us via Zoom. We also have Abdullahi Dele. He's the President, Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors and Senior Registrar, Department of Family Medicine, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, who joins us from our Abuja studio. We also have Comrade Toba Odumosu, who will be joining us later on. We also have joining us here in our Lagos studio, Mr. Augustine Anthony, who is a medical laboratory scientist, and he's the National Vice President, Young Medical Laboratory Scientists Forum, who joins us here in our Lagos studio. All right, so it's a complete panel. So I'm going to start with ladies first, naturally. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Ali. In 2023 alone, there were reports that about 9,000 medical doctors exited the country. And we have also the medical laboratory field feeling the impact of the brain drain as well, with about 10,000 leaving the country in the last 5 years or so. The
nurses too are not left out. The nursing field has also experienced a brain drain. About 7,500 nurses exiting Nigeria in search of greener pastures. So the image is quite telling. What I want you to do for us is to share with us what the typical day is like for medical practitioners, when you leave for the office and when you return. And I'm asking this question for good reason. I dread, falling down with malaria because I use a health center, and by the time I get to a health center, if I have to go in the first place, I pick a number, and my number is, the list is number 10 in a typical day. So what's it like for medical practitioners? And it's going to go around. So, Dr. Ali.
Thank you very much, the moderator, Ms. Moderator. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. That's a very nice question you have asked at this, point in time. The Japa syndrome has really affected the industry. A typical morning is, getting to work in the office as early as sometimes 8:30. And you come, you find out, the first thing that someone is possibly not being able to come, and you find out, okay, maybe she's unwell, and the next thing is that, or you just receive a post to say she's not she's not coming, she's maybe already relocated and something. So this comes up practically almost every day, disrupting services, and we just quickly have to make sure all the department that just suddenly lost a staff to Japa or someone, you just quickly need to find a way of making sure everywhere is covered. So it's what we see practically almost on a weekly, monthly, basis, whereby you just come to work, and you're looking for one staff or the other to continue the work with. But oftentimes we're able to make sure everything works very well. Calling up maybe some local to come and quickly help out with the day's work. So it's quite disturbing, but we make sure it doesn't disrupt our services at every point in time. And so in the light of this, we have agencies whereby we can easily call, to help us, with the local staffs that can easily come. So the Japa syndrome is really very, very active. It's facing us on a day-to-day basis, but somehow we become used to it, like Nigerians, whereby we get used to things easily, and we make sure the services is not disrupted, and we ensure our patients are seen and they are satisfied. So, but oftentimes it creates the numbers in terms of many patients will be seen by a single doctor, especially when it comes to public service. So that's where it's even affecting more than the private sectors, because even recently, the residents, that's people who goes into specialization. You find that you don't have more of them coming up into residency programs. So it's really affecting every sector. But the way it is, Nigerians, all of us, including in the healthcare sectors, we make sure that we stand up to the challenge, or to the challenges of the Japa syndrome. We that are remaining, we make sure we stand up and make sure that patients are seen, and the services is not unduly disrupted. But it can be quite challenging.
Yeah.
I can assure you that.
We'll explore the impact into the specialist field later on. But very quickly, you mentioned the need to bring in locum staff to come and assist. Just for the Nigerians, the layman who may not understand what the word locum means, maybe you should just quickly explain before we go to our other panelists.
Okay. Locum services or locum staff are those who are always, on the standby. They are there, so you can call on them to quickly come up and assist with the services. So and then they will come in and do what they are supposed to do.
Okay, so they're auxiliary staff. All right, so let's come to the studio now. Our comrade Toba Odumosu has since joined us, who is the Secretary, Nigeria Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives, Lagos chapter. And he joins us here in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for joining us. So naturally, I'll come to you next. What's the typical day like for you? And then it will go to Mr. Anthony.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. So I think for nurses, usually most of the nurses run a shift system. So you come in and do an handover. You look at your patient. You want to see what needs to be done. You have medication rounds to do. You have wound dressing or whatever you need to do. And then you go through that routine. You want to see if they've eaten. And of course, it also depends on what kind of ward you're working on. So that typically determines what you'll be doing during the day. And then you do that, basically some of them are repetitive. You have to do different medication rounds and things like that. And if there's a need for you to do counseling, whatever you do all that. Different engagement with the patient relative and all that. And then you hand over to the next person to, for us,
let me put it
the
in
24-hour thing, you have to...
Let me put it in context. What's the impact of the mass exit of nurses from Nigeria on those who are remaining, and what's the impact on the typical day of a Nigerian nurse?
Well, things have changed drastically. You can imagine, a ward that maybe ordinarily should be covered by 2, 3, 4 nurses or even 5, then you have 2 people running that kind of shift. It's completely changed the work dynamic because it impacts severely on the quality of work they're able to do. You then have to probably stay around the bare bones because you can't afford to, you don't have a luxury of time to. And of course, it has also drastically increased the margin of error. It's just like a production process. You are supposed to produce at a particular level of capacity, and then you overstretch that capacity. Even if it's machines, they begin to break down, they begin to... So for nurses too, people are now having work-related illnesses, back pain, all sorts, because fewer people have to do that work. And then for people who have ordinarily, when you're manning the ward, you have different levels of expertise and years of experience. So there's way the workload is also distributed. But now, when you have a fewer number of hands, the one person has to take care of several responsibilities. So it becomes even more difficult for you to, distribute tasks and all that. And of course, the burnout that comes from that means that you can, what we are seeing, in fact, we are already now considering some sort of indemnity policies because once you don't have safe staffing levels, when you now commit medical error or any error, it's your own license that is at stake. Nobody's going to look at what kind of work condition and work environment are you providing that service. That's probably led to that error. And clearly we have even started seeing some of those kind of cases. Medication error, all sort of things that will come naturally when you're putting a system under immense stress. So I think those are some of the things that we're seeing nowadays.
Quite revealing. Mr. Anthony.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. For us in the medical laboratory sector, there is one issue we have. Presently, when patients come to the facility, routinely they go through the nurse to the doctor, then they come back to the lab to do a test. And a lot of time, these patients already are tired. And they'll be like, please, I need my results urgently and urgently. And because of the fact that medical diagnostic testing is increasing, there's need to do more. Precision medicine is taking over the day. More tests need to be done. We have this issue presently because of the aspect of Japa, that the best hands are leaving. Now, young lab scientists and lab scientists migrate out of this country for 2 reasons. One, those who have the passion to practice, they're not having the necessary equipment and machines they need to do their work. That is those migrating on the grounds of passion. Now, also those who are looking at better remuneration and poor payment services across where they work, they see the need to migrate in that regard. Now, so if you look at these two sets of people, that takes away the best brains, so to say. Those who have the practice in mind, because it's not every scientist that wants to work in the lab. Some want to be in the research center, some want to involve in other things. But those who have the interest of the patient at heart. Now, remember that the healthcare sector itself is not a lucrative industry, so to say. It's a thing of passion. Because a typical work day for a male lab scientist, you come to work by 8 o'clock, you're expected to be in the work till 4. Now, that is when you have enough hands. What happens when a job that's supposed to be done by 5 persons, you guys are just 2? A lot of places don't have phlebotomists, which are those who bleed patients to take blood. You still have to run out from the lab to do that. And when you finish with that, you need to still go back to the lab, standardize your reagents, you need to do quality control, you need to do your tests, ensuring that the result which the doctor is going to act on to give prescription is clear. So now imagine when somebody, example, is not having hepatitis, and I screen and I say this person is hepatitis B positive. Somebody is not having HIV because of stress of job, and I screen and I say this person is HIV positive. The doctor is going to add on that result and start giving antiretroviral therapy. Now look at the impact. Now, what are the things that causes it? A lot of time, pressure. Handling multiple priorities at the same time, fine, we were trained to do a lot at the same time, but not to get into breaking limit. You are supposed to come to work by 8 and definitely have a lunch break around 12:1 and close by 4. But a lot of time you see people working from that time to even 8 p.m. in the night. That's like 12 hours, and you still have to come back tomorrow to continue the same process. And even that person who is there, fine, is getting all the experiences, being able to work under pressure, improves his CV and runs away and leaves the country. And you now need to still bring another hand who is going to repeat the same circle. So it's more like a vicious circle, and we keep losing the best hand. Fine and good, a lot of persons, there are those who have interacted with in my years of practice who have the mindset to stay. But the working conditions is something that have not so been motivational, so to speak, for them to see the need to give back to the fatherland. The challenges a lot of time are plenty, but then we have people who have the interest of the patient at heart. But one challenge they do have is the fact that the working conditions are not cool, and there are not necessary infrastructure to carry out the processes that they needed to do. So that increases stress on a general level. And one present killer disease, which is not a routine disease, is stress. Presently, even in this Lagos, a lot of patients are stressed. You have to wake up at 3 a.m.
Indeed, quite a lot to chew on.
Yeah, so you get...
Let's take it now to our guest in our Abuja studio, Mr. Ali. I know that you have quite a lot to say about what you've heard so far, so go ahead.
Oh, thank you very, very much. I want to start by thanking you for having me this morning, and thank you for the good job you're doing. So take it from the last speaker, it's quite sad, and I concur, it's a vicious cycle. My association has actually been pointing out to this vicious cycle for a very long time by now. For the last 5 years, we've actually been pointing to this eventual situation, because we need to look at Japa as not just a one-time event, but a sequence of events. And like I said, it's a vicious cycle, making it that once some leave, you have a lot more push factors that will make others to leave. We have for a long time concentrated on the pull factors. Yes, the better life over there, the remuneration, that we are neglecting the push factors. What is making the healthcare workers leave Nigeria? You asked that what is the routine day like for the healthcare worker? Well, the routine day is always very, very, very difficult. What do I mean? If you look at the last statistics the NMA gave about doctor to patient ratio, you will see that we have about 1 doctor to 5,000 patients on an average. That means in a day, you are expecting that 1 doctor will see 40, 45 patients for a routine activity, from the emergency to the clinics and then for other procedures. Now, you need to understand also that when you have this cycle, it actually affects both the patient and the healthcare worker. What do I mean? The healthcare worker comes in, there's a crowd to see, he's trying to prioritize, he's trying to triage his patients as much as possible so that he sees the ones that are most needed to be seen as fast as possible. Number one, this idea of triaging is being misunderstood by the common patients that sees them calling in a patient that came after them. Results in anger, it results in violence within that clinic. Now, the patient being angry will vent the anger on the doctor, will vent the anger on the nurses. You ask the patient for a lab result or a lab test, the patient goes with that anger to the lab, And the lab scientist that is already being overworked, as maybe a place where you have 5 people meant to work, you have like maybe 1 or 2 trying to prioritize things. The angry patient comes in, and then there's another a round of verbal assault and all that. And that is the typical day in our healthcare sector. Now, what does this actually cause to the healthcare worker? Number 1, there's the physical burnout. There's the mental stress. There's the psychological stress. You are coming to work every day, and you are already expecting that there's one person or one individual that is going to shout on you, either the patient relative or even your superiors at work, because of the stress of work. When the stress of work gets in, there's no way everybody will want to vent in anger. So what are we looking at as the protocol to the job description of each healthcare worker? What is our plan for working hours? Like the cardiologist actually pointed out, there are locum officers. But who are these locum officers? Locum officers are actually people that are not primarily employed in that facility. They are employed somewhere else, but they are called in to come and block up or clear up a gap in the healthcare services of that facility. So if an individual that has gone somewhere else to work before is being called up by another facility to come and please help us cover, and healthcare is a very sensitive region. You as a healthcare worker, even when stressed, might actually just look at it that if we don't go here to help out here, there will be a lacuna, and a lot of other patients will have a lot of other comorbidities or mortalities to come with it. So that way, a stressed healthcare worker lives from one point of duty to the other. And all this is the vicious cycle we are currently seeing. Now, when that cycle comes in, on doing all of this, healthcare is not lucrative. It's actually a misnomer. It gives you an average form of life, basically, average form of life. And based on this current economy, it is even going far below average right now, far, far below average. So you are having to spend the better part of your life tending to other people. You do not have time for family. You don't have time for self. And you are not well remunerated for all of these activities. The worst part is that you don't have a toxic environment where you are working both at work, and then there's a toxic environment at home, because you are carrying up whatever stress from work home and whatever stress from home back to work. All of these are the things that we need to put into place. So I think in as much as we are trying to look at how we will increase the number, we have to also think about what the working environment within our health facility is. How are we planning to support the healthcare worker to stay within the healthcare sector? You need to see things from a broader perspective. Like one of the speakers once pointed out, it's all about even career progression. What is it that the person wants to do? How many subspecialties are being supported by the Nigerian healthcare facilities? How many of them are allowed to express themselves formally? If they are not allowing them to express themselves and they have an opportunity, why are we saying that they are not being patriotic to leave and actually go and express themselves the way they want to express themselves? All of things are things we need to put into perspective when we are looking at the Japa syndrome as it's being connoted to be, and how we can solve it as much as possible.
Let me take it from what you just said, Mr. Abdullahi Dele. You said that the healthcare sector is not lucrative. So let me come back to the studio to Comrade Odumosu. As a Secretary, National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives in Lagos, when you say that the healthcare sector is not lucrative, most times we see those who Japa, in that word, go out there and they end up studying nursing, or maybe fine-tune what they had already studied here in Nigeria, and many of them turn out to be nurses or healthcare workers in that space. Would you really blame them for leaving this country to go abroad for greener pasture? Would you sincerely blame them? And if you do or don't, why?
Thank you very much for that question. I think it's a perfect, it makes perfect economic sense to leave the country, to go and practice abroad, because clearly, I mean, anywhere, labor will always move in the direction of capital. And where your services are better paid for, people always move in that direction. I mean, we operate, globally, a free market system. So I wouldn't blame anybody for leaving. In fact, when people see young nurses here, even patients ask you why you're here, people you are taking care of. Because, you can easily do the maths. When you know what you earn here, you know what the possibility is there, and all the opportunities are available, and the kind of practice environment you're going to find yourself. And you can understand how much more lucrative it is when people who have essentially finished maybe bachelor's or they have working experience, and then they travel about to go study, even from the low entry ones that maybe licensed practical nursing is lucrating enough for people to go into that, let alone when you now have to come in at RN or bachelor's level. So, I mean, it's easy for anybody to come to that decision. But of course, I know there's a huge global shortage of nurses. We're talking about, at least WHO last statistics is saying about 5.1 million nurses by 2030. So that's a huge article. And when you look at the push and pull factors, I mean, in some of these places, you have sign-up bonuses, they are willing to pay for your relocation, they are willing to, so there's so much in the package that it's very easy for anybody to come to that decision to leave the country. I mean, those are the pull factors. Just like it was mentioned, you look at the push factors, the work environment, the stress, even the pay package. You have serious anxiety about your future. That, I mean, if I continue to do this for, where will you exactly get me in the next 10 years? How do I plan ahead? And when you know that there's an option where you can go work somewhere and then you wouldn't have, all those worries would almost magically disappear. Nobody would. So for people who are here, they deserve so much commendation. I mean, those who genuinely want to save, because there are also so many of our members who are just waiting to exit. I mean, before it used to be that people would work 5-6 years, then they will start their exit plans. Now, I mean, the younger, whatever, they actually write their IELTS maybe in their final year, in their NY. It's like they're just preparing. They don't even want to have a day of work experience within the system, because, I mean, during your clinical posting, you've seen what the system looks like.
Right.
It's not something you want to...
Quite a picture you've painted, and this is reality, and that's why we're having this conversation to, again, remind those who are in position of authority, just in case they've forgotten, that we have literally a disaster on our hands, that we need to act as fast as yesterday. So let me take this to Dr. Ali, because you talked about the push and the pull factors, but she is staying. So, Dr. Ali, I'll come to you now. So he has talked about the push, the pull factor, but obviously there is a keep factor as well, which is keeping you or has kept you now. So what would be those keep factors in spite of the push and pull factors? I hope you catch my drift here.
Yes, I pretty catch what you're asking about. I mean, to me as a doctor, I know one thing about me is that I have passion for the job. And the passion is that, look, I just need to help my people here. And that is the first thing, because here we need the services even more than ever before. And if you think jettisoning for greener pastures and going away, that shouldn't be the case. If you trained here, if you are a trained doctor or nurse here, you know that they need us more here. They need our expertise more here. But over there, it's already saturated. It is already saturated. We need ourselves here more. So we need to help our people. And one thing that always is a driving factor is that if all of us decide to leave, and then who's going to help? Who's going to do the work here? Who's going to save our own people? And when you stay in a place like this, you can reach the top of your career because you are needed, you'll be seen, you'll be doing what you are expected to do, and you are doing it well, and people will see you, and then you will rise up even faster in your career. So I don't think, I know it's never easy, you know, we're in a developing country or a developing, you know, nation, so it's never easy. So, but services over what we call monetary gain, you know, is what has been the driving factor here. And then, of course, we need us more here.
Right.
Going abroad, I know you can go abroad for training. You can always, and now with the invent of the internet, the virtual you can attend meetings virtually. For example, I've registered for the European Society of Cardiology meeting, virtually, and we're starting on the 30th of August, and I'm joining them.
Right.
And I even found that even being on virtual is even better for me than going, physically, because I can move from room to room on my laptop as I'm doing right now, and I can converse. I can send them my questions, and they attend to me right in the large room. So, and I can easily move from one room to the other to join meetings. So really, it's just a mindset. People need to find out what really are we supposed to do? What can we do to our own nation? What really, we hear the figures all over the world. How can I move this thing? The WHO has said that by the year 2050, 435 million Africans are going to have, develop hypertension, and quite a number are going to die, from that. What will you do? You have to contribute your own quota. It's never easy anywhere in the world, but people just stay and make sure they help the society, because that's the service industry where we have met ourselves.
Well,
I know we need
quite a passionate case you have made here, but obviously there are other angles to this, and again I must say that yes, commendation has to be given to those who are choosing to stay, but those who are choosing to go too, they seem to have their reasons. So the essence of this conversation is maybe find that balance. And we've brought you in. I mean, you've worked in the private sector. Maybe we can then borrow some of the recipe that the private sector has used and maybe replicate it in the public sector as well. So, but we'll go to break now. When we return, we'll still have Mr. Anthony. We'll still have the president of the NARD to chime in on this one. This is for everyone, literally. If you're watching, would like to hear from you. Let us know what you think about this current situation we're in right now. So we'll go to break now. When we return, we'll continue the conversation around the health sector. They say health as well. So, hey, let's talk about it. Stay with us. Nigeria is facing a public health emergency in the shape of cholera. Over 100 people have died as a result of cholera. And yet again, we have to talk about the health sector. How prepared is it first to handle this and future public health emergencies? This is a constant issue we have to face. So how about we just get into the dirty work and perhaps find a way to resolve this. So we have a full panel of healthcare professionals here with us on the program. We'll be speaking with Dr. Folashade Ali, consultant cardiologist, the CMD of Lagos Executive Cardiovascular Center, Abdullahi Dele, President, NARD, that's the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, Comrade Toba Odumosu, Secretary of Nurses and Midwives Association, Lagos Chapter, and Augustine Anthony, Medical Laboratory Scientist, National VP, Young Medical Laboratory Scientists Forum. Gentlemen and lady, quite an interesting conversation. So let me come to you now, Mr. Antonia. I know when that conversation around the push, pull, and the keep factor, which I may have just invented, was happening, I saw you were really interested in getting in, and I'd like to know what it is for you. Are you one of those who are maybe quarter to Japa, or you're choosing to stay to serve in spite of the current working conditions? How are you able to manage this dilemma? That's my question to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I think it's more spot on and a personal question, which is good. So, talking about the kick and push factors, I began by saying the healthcare sector is not lucrative, even though pay is fine compared to routine Nigerian workflow. It's a thing of passion. Now, there are those who want to stay on a personal level. Even though I should leave this country, I still want to come back. The impact on the healthcare sector. And if I should leave, why am I leaving? We have to be clear about our purpose. So this issue of traveling, some persons go from one country to the other. It's very easy to go to the Middle East. There are a lot of sponsorships. The UK initially used to be very easy, but now it's tending to be more tedious. The same thing with Ireland. I have a lot of friends who have left, quite a whole lot of them. They move from UK, they go to US, they move from UK, they go to Canada. Some of them have gained citizenship and decided to stay. One posted the other day that this is his final destination. So for me as a person, I believe in the future of the country. And just as Dr. Folashade said, right, I think I got the name correctly, if everybody should leave, what is in for us here? I think there should be a mindset shift. We should start thinking about what we can do for the country. A lot of time when young Nigerians leave, they say that I don't want to do anything with that country again. No. This is your fatherland. You're still involved, or your motherland, whatever version of it you think about. You're still involved. And we have to think about what can we do for Nigeria. And if you must leave, moreover, you cannot stop people from leaving. And the truth is that Nigeria does not have the highest rate of migration of skilled workers. I think India tops that list. Bangladesh, China, they're out there. But they are not having this problem because while good hands are leaving, there are also enough good hands who are staying back to train.
And
a lot of them who leave...
They are coming back to replicate what they've seen there.
A lot of them who leave are able to contribute back to the home country. You heard when the doctor was talking about attending international conferences, they are able to send them spaces and opportunities to their colleagues here to be able to improve themselves so that they can be able to replicate the same thing back home. So it's not just about what can we do to stop people leaving. You cannot stop it. That is just the sad reality. But the question, the discussion should now be when people leave, how can they best contribute back to the fatherland? And those who are going out, like in the olden days when you had people who, a lot of the professors today schooled abroad, but they all came back. But what was the policy that was adopted that made them to go? God's skills came back to impact. If they didn't impact on this young generation now that we are, how are we not able to gain the skills that we're able to use to migrate out? Because for you to travel, you have to be employable first of all. So you could also give credit to the Nigerian system that the system is very resilient. It makes you resilient such that it can handle any pressure. And people like Nigerians because we're able to work under pressure. So you should also give credit to those who came back and impacted. So if you decide to travel and not to come back, how best are you going to give back to the system? I think that should be something we are going to be looking at, not about just stopping people from traveling. Because
that's what you're calling to a mindset shift. I'm wondering what stage your immigration papers are right now, whether they're at the advanced stage or they're at the middle stage. But it's an important conversation all the same, and you're calling for patriotism is welcome, and we hope that others are thinking in that same vein. But speaking of, what government is doing, to reduce the pressure across board in all health institutions, let's hear from the Minister of Health, and then we'll be right back.
This has been laid out, both in terms of the primary healthcare system, our hospitals is integrated within that, dealing with human resources, the finances, and the communities around that effort, with quality moving through the whole effort to unlock the healthcare value chain, which is an important element, the whole ecosystem that is bringing our private sector actors to unleash the potential that exists in our economy through multiple work streams. And His Excellency President announced the initiative to unlock the healthcare value chain as a presidential initiative, recognizing this imperative. And finally, the health security agenda, learning from the COVID-19 experience, as Mr. Tunji also articulated, so that we are prepared not only for outbreaks, epidemics, pandemics that may come, but also displacements and challenges in the humanitarian setting, or with climate change and health, and the displacements that could occur with flooding and other crises. We will piggyback this effort, starting from the point of view that we have a National Health Act that has created the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund, and to look at it carefully, and in this council we'll discuss it. How can it be more effective, more efficient, as a vehicle to drive some of the strategic shifts to improve the primary healthcare system on our path to achieving our wider goals.
And we've heard that time and again, and what stage the deployment of fund for the revamping of primary healthcare is currently is what we do not know. But, perhaps our guests, our complete panelists will, respond to that one after the other. But I'm coming to you now, Dr. Dele in our Abuja studio. Dr. Ali had begun to talk about the impact of this pressure on, specialists, the presence of specialists in medical institutions, which is where I want us to explore now. in Nigeria, for instance, a mainstream investigation by a mainstream media revealed that there are about 100 oncologists for the treatment of cancer care in the country. And I wonder how that is also impacting other areas of specialization in the medical field, be it hepatology, pulmonology, dermatology, or epidemiology. Just how many of these specialists do we still have left? And what's the impact on patient care and perhaps mortality rates in these fields if they're just as little as 100 as we have in the oncology field as well?
Thank you very, very much. I don't know if I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
I'm getting it a little skipped here. To quickly answer your question, one, yes, we have to identify that though we have a lot of these people trained, only few of them are currently available. And that is what is affecting our specialist care. I can use my own hospital as an example. You barely have up to 5 or 6 of them as pulmonologists within the whole system. It's not like as if we didn't have those that were there before, but a lot of them have left for greener pastures. And I don't like to use the term greener pastures because that means what I'm saying is that the grass is not green over here. I wish to believe that the grass is still green over here. I know one of the pointers that was raised earlier that Mr. Auguste was answering was, okay, what are the key factors? What is it that's keeping us here? For most of us, it's still passion, patriotism, although we need to start balancing that with reality. And you need to actually understand the argument of those that have left, why they've left, and what it is they are saying. For healthcare workers that have reached the pinnacle of their career, it's easier for them to make the rational decision of staying. But for a young healthcare worker moving up, it's not so easy making that thing because you have to just oppose it with the current reality and what the future might look like for you, your family, and all the other people that have to depend on you. Now, for the effects that the ministry has had based on the specialist training, I want to first start by pointing it out that the problem we currently see today is a chronic issue. Like I pointed out earlier, my own association already envisaged this future like 5-6 years ago. If you look at most of our documentations, most of our communiques, we've actually been screaming about the exodus of doctors for over 5 years. If we could all remember, at one point in time, we even said maybe to keep the system running, a policy of 1-for-1 replacement in the healthcare sector. We've demanded for the call for state of emergency in the healthcare sector because we saw the reality that the Nigerians are just coming to terms with right now. A case whereby you are actually saying the fact that it's not just about the ones that have left, but what the effect is on the ones that are left on behind. The workload, the burnout, the psychological stress, the mental stress, and how many of them will this tilt? The push factors we need to look at is not just the poor remuneration alone. We need to look at the toxic work environment within each of these facilities and how it affects the psyche of the people and how it helps them make that decision to leave. It's easier for you when the stress is not much to say, okay, fine, maybe I can just push through. But when you are not well remunerated for an activity, and you tend to always come to work sad, leave work sad, then you make a decision one day, regardless of how much they're paying you, that you want to leave. Like it has always been postulated in most of our engagements with the government, we have pointed it out that even when there is a lot of funds committed into the specialist care of training, what are we doing to ensure we keep those that we have trained in place? So yes, you might train the oncologist, you might train the nephrologist, the pulmonologist, but then you don't have a functional dialysis center. You don't have a cath lab that they can function as a cardiologist. You have very limited number of even the oncology medications for them to use. No oncologist wants to sit down with a cancer patient just to watch the cancer patient die. What they want is a situation whereby their impact is felt. They are touching the patient and then the patient is getting better and there's a form of appreciation. They are seeing the effect of their work. But when you have a case whereby you see a cancer patient, and even the basic investigation for this cancer patient cannot be done, for you to get the basic medications for this cancer patient becomes extremely difficult. And the oncologist will look for a sphere whereby he can get all of this easily, get a good work done, and do a lot of things. Yes, the patriot in me will always call on every healthcare worker to please let us look inwards and face the reality that Nigeria is our own, and we'll have to come back at one point in time, even if we leave. And for all those of us that have decided not to leave, then we have to give it all to ensure that this healthcare sector works. But we need to face our own reality also, which is the government needs to do more to support. It's not about training. Like a point in time, I could remember that one of the few things that the government put up was the fact that they increased the number of, increased the capacity of each training school to produce healthcare workers. Yes, it's a good move. But are we producing healthcare workers for the Nigerian society, or we are producing healthcare workers to be exported to other places? The healthcare sphere around the world is lacking everywhere. You have, even within Africa, people from Gambia, Uganda. If you look at the West African college training, you will see that they have limited number of consultants in almost other West African countries. Nigeria is the one that is most populated. These people are opening their doors, and they are calling on all our specialists that we've trained to come and work with better remuneration, a better form of welfare package for them. So the question you want to ask is, like Kayode said, what are the key factors? Nigeria needs to start looking inwards into key factors. Like one person was pointed out, there's relocation allowance. Now, I'm telling you, I'm going to pay you to come. I'm going to pay you better than where you are currently, and I'm going to give you other welfare packages. Before you think about career progression in that place, you are already there. And then when you are there, you started work, and it's okay, fine, now can I progress in my career? But those are the things. So what is it that the Nigerian society is giving to the healthcare worker as a way of supporting? I also have to laud the ministry right now. I noticed that there are bills for the agencies for infrastructure development, and there is this move by the Ministry of Health currently to help improve the facilities of each institution across the country, right from the federal government coffers. It's a good one, but it's still a long-term thing. We need to find a way of keeping our healthcare workers within our facilities, and then we support them as much as possible. Even if we better enumerate them, how do we take care of their working hours? How do we create laws to protect them, knowing fully well that they are working in a disadvantaged region? These are the things that we need to put into place. What about housing for the healthcare workers? What about car loans for the healthcare workers? So many other things that we can do to keep these healthcare workers within our facilities. So yes, there is a lot being done in the part of specialist training, but what is being done in this part of keeping the specialists within our health facilities? That is what we need to look into.
All right, so talking about what we need to do, taking it from Dr. Dele, thank you very much for taking us into the future, because we have talked a lot about the challenges, what is going on currently, but what should we now be doing? Let me go to Dr. Folashade Ali. Mr. Anthony had talked earlier about, in the past, people who go abroad to study actually give back to the home country. We've talked about India and some other countries. Why they're doing better is because when they go, they end up impacting on their home country. So I would like to ask, is there like an association of, permit me to use maybe a Japa association, or a platform that helps them come together so that when they go there and they have learned a lot, they can also impact on their home country in Nigeria, maybe through training, through whatever means it is that is possible, to use a platform that brings that will bring all of these people together who have gone abroad and witnessed that side of life, to impact these doctors and professionals in the health sector in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much for that input. Like right now, especially we that are in the private health sector, we're trying to ensure that there is collaboration. The word now is collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. You know, like we reach out to the specialists abroad, my colleagues, you know, both, mates, senior, junior, we reach out to them. We're doing this thing right now, and we want you could come and join us. And you find out really they are willing to come back home and give their own quota into the society, because I can assure you, they know that the gap is really huge back home. and they are ready to come home. So we've set up some platforms whereby they come in and join in whatever we want them in their field of expertise. So we bring them in, and they come around, and they can come in different groups. You can call them privately. They themselves form a team of mission. They call it mission, and they come in as a group. If, for example, the cardiac surgeons, they come in with their perfusionists, with their everyone involved, and then they come around in that respect. So the word now is collaboration, and I think that should be the case even in government setting, because healthcare sector, not one single person can do it. The government cannot do all. We all need to come together. But the platform by which I want the government to help us here is, to bring to make it easier for people that's experts, colleagues, to come back in terms of, I don't know how they can do it in terms of possibly they can entice them with some good remunerations, so they come home. And usually when they come, they train others that are here as well in their field of expertise. They impart their knowledge. It's like importing. They import their knowledge, and they train people on ground. So we've had people who have been trained under different aims of them, right. And then so these are what we have been doing in the private healthcare sectors. We've been collaborating seriously with colleagues abroad to come and offer their expertise, because we tell them, look, what you are doing over there, we need you more here. We need you more here, and they are always glad to come back. So the government should possibly also look at how we can bring back our own people to come and give their quota in their different fields of expertise: oncologists, cardiologists, right. Interventionists, well, and all on, yes.
Maybe another day we'll talk about ease of doing business as well for a lot of them in terms of funding, because a lot of them have great ideas, they're well-skilled. I think there was this doctor that trended recently. I did a video that is coming back to Nigeria to render his service. A lot of them who want to do that, but then they think of the bottlenecks. They think, how will the civil service respond if I want to register this, that, and they just think, you know what, forget it. I'm going to stay here and keep. So I think it's something government needs to think about. Have using special purpose vehicles is a bit tricky these days, but have a special, arrangement where they can just apply easily and start their business and, of course, get all the paperwork done. Let me quickly come to you, Mr. Odumosu, as we begin to wind down. Quite an important point she has raised. I think at the heart of this is money. As simple as that. Money for remuneration, welfare, money for equipment, and of course management. Because it's one thing to have the funds, it's another thing to manage the funds. But I want us to wind down on this, cholera matter. Again, if we're able to paint a vivid picture, maybe those who are meant to do something will see that, okay, we're meant to do something. So we're faced with the challenge of cholera, right? And we need to, we saw what we did with COVID, right? How we stood up to it. So first, in terms of responding to cholera, this cholera outbreak, are we well equipped? Perhaps, again, that can paint a picture. What have you seen? So, again, we can say this is where we're at and this is what we need to do to get there.
Yeah, thank you. So, I think that, the thing to even say is that, especially for a low-income country like us, the first thing is prevention. We shouldn't even be having those kind of outbreaks in the first place, because having them means that there are certain systemic issues. It also comes from state, for example, water. Yeah. The fact that we do not have running water, Lagos, the water corporation does not supply water. People don't have, those are things that lead to that, and those are systemic issues, and which then, of course, put pressure on, because the recommendation for especially countries who are resource constrained like us is always to, dwell more on the prevention. You can't really afford to be having these kind of cases because they're quite they'll put a lot of pressure on your system. So, but we're just doing whatever we can do within the resources and the hands we have. So, and when we want to place many of the responsibility for all these issues at the foot of the government, You understand? Because when we have to also look at it from the structure, and before we look at the macro issues of the migration and Japa that we're having. Take, for example, budgetary allocation. I mean, this year, at the federal level, we are seeing something maybe a little over 5%. Much farther away from the 15% Abuja declaration we always talk about. Which means that if you are doing that at 5%, you are never going to get the kind of healthcare system you're looking for. It's not it's just simple math. It's just not going to happen. I mean, the fact that you have even been, I mean, the Abuja declaration was 2001, and consistently we've never met that target, which means that you have been in consistent deficit all the years. So that even if you want to play catch-up, you must be thinking of how can we even put it at maybe 20%. And which comes to the idea of the fact that almost all associations have been talking about the declaration of a state of emergency, because you're just looking at a system that might just collapse under the right conditions. I mean, if you have a pandemic that stretches the system too far, you just see a system that would crumble and not be able to actually adequately respond. And that is one key area that would, if we're going to see anything different, the budget already, I mean, says what the spending priority of the government is. If they're not willing to prioritize those things by giving correct, appropriate budgetary allocation to health, there's just nothing. You continue to see Japa, you continue to see all these systems, and the system will continue to decay. And maybe I should just say that also, because those are like low-hanging things that I think
30 seconds. Yeah,
that can be taken up. Because you mentioned about finance, that without bringing a lot of finance into the system, nothing will change. The NHI Act was supposed to do something for us, but I mean, 2 years down the line, we've not seen much. And when you also look at the system, one important thing we must see is that the regulatory space is very lax. I mean, I can say as much as 40 to 50% of people within the health sector have no business there. You have all sorts of people who are not, because if you plug all those holes, magically you just see that there is money to actually finance many of the things we are talking about. It's not that Nigeria or the health system cannot throw up enough welfare package, but there are also serious regulatory issues that make it very difficult.
So much for the government to reflect on, and this has been a very, very rewarding and constructive interview. You know, we've heard about possibility of misdiagnosis, margin of error, the pressure that you're going through, the key factors, and for those who have chosen to stay, the zeal. And, you know, I just want to say that we appreciate all of you who have chosen to stay. Mr. Abdullahi Dele, you know, Comrade Odumosu, Mr. Anthony, and Dr. Ali, thank you so much for choosing to stay and for the work that you are doing, you know, to keep the health sector going. We appreciate you. So we've had Dr. Folashade Ali, private medical practitioner, consultant, cardiologist, Lagos Executive Cardiovascular Center, who joined us via Zoom. We've also had Dr. Abdullahi Dele, who is the president, Nigeria Association of Resident Doctors, and senior registrar, Department of Family Medicine, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital. Thank you very much for your time, sir. We've also had Mr. Toba Odumosu, who's the Secretary, National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives, Lagos chapter. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. We've also had Mr. Augustine Anthony, who is a medical laboratory scientist and the National Vice President, South-South Young Medical Laboratory Scientists Forum, Nigeria. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
So we'll switch gears now from the health sector to the education sector to look at yet another thorny issue and how to address it. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Well, there's a big issue now playing out in Nigeria's tertiary institution. Yes, the universities have had their fair share. We don't know what the coming days will be, but even for the polytechnics as well. Major issue, and it centers around this contentious scheme of service by the NBTE, that's the National Board for Technical Education. Just to give you a proper context, let's bring in Mr. Anderson Ezebe, former president of Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics. He joins us virtually on the program this morning. Welcome to the morning brief. I know a lot of people are wondering, what is this scheme of service again? You've gone through your OND, HND. I mean, this is not service, youth service. This is scheme of service. So for those who are wondering what this is, before we then get into the other issues, please walk us through what this proposal by the MBTE is about, how it ties into perhaps the curriculum already existing of polytechnics or not. Mr. Ezebe, over to you now. I wonder if you can hear me, Mr. Anderson Ezebe.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, even though I didn't hear you very well, but I'll take from the parts that I've heard. I want to thank you for having us in your program this morning. Briefly, the scheme of service for polytechnics or for any establishment, it's a very, very important document.
Please go ahead. All right, Mr. Ezebe, you can go ahead on the point you were making. All right, not to worry.
It's a very important document, and it speaks to career, definitions like cadres that will be obtainable in the system, because what we have is a system where the different parts complement, one another. So it defines the different cadres. It prescribes qualifications for entry into these cadres, and it also defines qualifications or what you need to obtain before you can progress in each of the cadres. So it's a very important document. It's also a very, very critical regulatory instrument, and that is where the National Board for Technical Education comes in. The MBTE is a regulatory body for the sector. And so it is one of the most important instruments, of regulations, because MBT is there to maintain, standards, establish minimum standards, and ensure that these standards are maintained, by polytechnics, irrespective of ownership, whether it's owned by the federal government or state governments or even, private, polytechnics. So that document is very important, and the importance attached to it is what led to its review. The review process is supposed to align this document to best practice, best practices, in the world of academics. The review process commenced sometime in 2018 because the existing one was actually very old. In the process, stakeholders were involved. Different stakeholder groups are involved in all the trade unions, the staff trade unions in the sector. The rectors, that is the chief executives, the body of registrars, the COREG, the bossers, the polytechnic librarians, complain. We are all there, and the MBTE coordinated these efforts. There are several engagements, and a draft, an acceptable draft, was prepared. Now, we have been waiting for the release of this document by the National Board for Technical Education upon approval by the board of the National Board for Technical Education. On the 19th of this month, on the 19th of June, rather, we were invited to an event in Kaduna, and lo and behold, a document was distributed as the new scheme of service for polytechnics. Now, we took home these documents, and when we went through these documents, it was a case of failed expectations. Failed expectations in the sense that the document came out worse than it was when it was going in, for the review process. For instance, we had issues around discrimination against higher national diploma holders. Of course, you know that this particular matter has been in the public space for decades, for a very long time. And we've always contended that this should not be the case. There shouldn't be discrimination against higher national diploma holders in the public sector and also in the private sector, that persons should be judged by their level of productivity in their workplace. Now, the document in itself has deepened the issue of discrimination against higher national diploma holders in their own system, that is in the polytechnics. This is very unfortunate. It's closed down the bars. Before then, some of those in the non-teaching areas who are higher national diploma holders, we are getting to the level called Contedis 14, and then suddenly this document has brought them down to Contedis 12, telling them that they cannot go beyond a particular level, and essentially subordinating them to their colleagues who have coming from the university system. The same document, by its contents, is also very clear about the fact that that no product from the Polytechnic system can be a POSA or a registrar by the content of that particular document. And we are saying no to this. We are shocked, we are taken aback by the fact that this could be contained in a document that is going to be used to regulate polytechnics. For the lecturing cadre, we are also shocked. We are taken aback by the fact that before now, it will take a minimum of 18 years for a fresh intake to move from the base to the peak. That is, to move from the assistant lecturer level to the chief lecturer level. And then suddenly we have seen a document that is now saying it will take you 26 years to get to that point. And we are asking questions, where are these things coming from? Because this is so different from the other two legs of the tertiary education tripod in the country. We now have a 9-level structure with each requiring a minimum of 3 years, and for the last 3, you will now require a minimum of 4 years to get promoted. And we are saying no. And again, there was a very, very strange insertion, very contestable, where it is now required that those of us in the lecturing cadre that will be required to get a certain certification, a national skills qualification, level 3, before you can get promoted. This is very strange. Strange in the sense that even before you get promoted to certain levels, you are required to belong to a professional body. You have lecturers who are fellows in their respective, professional body limits, and then you are now telling them that they should go and get the equivalent of a trade test certification in a particular skill before they can get promoted. We didn't see any justification for this, and that was the reason, and and many others that led our union to start agitations and asking questions. Why are we bringing out this kind of document for the regulation of polytechnics?
All right.
From the 19th of July, from the 19th of June, rather, when this document was introduced, MPT has written 4 different letters. The first of the letters came on the 21st of June, which is barely 48 hours after this document was presented, and that letter was addressed to the chairman of governing councils and rectors and provosts of polytechnics and all TVET institutions. It was a circular on the implementation of the document, and he was asking them to ensure strict compliance. And of course, again, the same day, there was also another document dated 21st of June, addressed to the rectors and provosts of polytechnics and TVET institutions, and ordering copies of the new, asking them to subscribe to copies or buy copies for a fee of 10,000, meaning that MPTE has already sent out these documents to the polytechnics for immediate implementation.
Mr. Ezebe,
on the 24th of June 2024, there was another letter from the MPTE to the head of civil service of the Federation. This is just 3 days later. Again, and in that particular document, the MPTE was drawing the attention of the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation to the fact that there
Mr. Ezebe, let's talk about the issue of, I'm glad you brought up the issue of discrimination against people who attended higher national diploma students. Let's talk about the first part of that document. It says that the suspension of the implementation on all aspects of the document which deepens the unfortunate discrimination against HND holders in that document. And we go to number 5 too, which says the suspension of the implementation of any aspect of the document that undermines workplace relativity, unfair reward system, and practices incompatible with tertiary education globally. And then we go back to what the polytechnics are actually meant to be for. From the beginning, now we're comparing them to universities and we're saying, oh, when a university graduate wants to get a master's degree, the person just goes straight. But when a Polytechnic graduate wants to get a master's degree, you have to do a postgraduate. So it means that there is a difference. Was that how it was at the beginning? What was the Polytechnic set up for when all of these started?
The truth of the matter is that the polytechnics have a mandate that is recognized by both legal instruments and policy instruments. The legal instruments is such that polytechnics are expected to produce professionals in the areas of applied science, engineering, and also commerce. That is as captured in the Federal Polytechnics Act.
And are these professionals supposed to be at par with the university graduates?
Yes. The issue here is this, there's a lot of talk, in the public space about superiority and all of that. And these things are not backed by any discernible, evidence. We have always asked, can you get us, curriculum for selected programs, maybe in the university system and in the polytechnic system, and check the difference, whether there is really any significant difference, whether even that of the polytechnics is even richer in terms of hands-on, skills. And we do not think that polytechnic products are inferior to university products. The way that polytechnic products are treated is so unfortunate. And several efforts have gone into trying to, take this away, including bills passed by the National Assembly but never assented into law, by Mr. President. We also feel that if there is a place that products of polytechnics in Nigeria can call their home, that it is the polytechnics themselves. And therefore, we do not see any basis or any reason why the MDTE will release a document that further entrenches discrimination against holders or products of the sector in their own system. We do not think that this is correct.
So, Mr. Anderson, one of the issues of contention from some members of your association on this document is also the fact that the head of service is the one approving the document, and you said yourself that the MBT has begun releasing it already. So which association or individual, by law establishing the Board for Technical Education, is duly assigned the responsibility of approving this document? Is it the head of the MBT, or is it the head of the civil service of the Federation? And, just to add to that, to manage our time, following the expiration of the 15-day ultimatum that your association has issued, and this document still goes ahead with being implemented by the relevant authority, what would your members be resorting to?
Yes, that's a very good question. It's a very good question because the issue of validity of this document is also one of the issues we are raising. Now, you are not my employer. If you're not my employer, do you have the right to come and prescribe how I should be assessed for promotion or how I should be employed? You don't have such rights. We believe that you don't have such rights if you're not our employers. Now, head of civil service of the Federation is not our employers. By law, our employers are the different governing councils of the federal polytechnics and also the state polytechnics, their own governing councils. Now, the involvement of the National Board for Technical Education as a regulatory body is to prescribe minimum standards. And such minimum standards are supposed to be approved by the board of the National Board for Technical Education. The MDTE has a board, or is supposed to have a board constituted by the federal government. And so when the board of the MDTE approves, such a document, then the document can now be made fit for use by respective, institutions as a guide with respect or as a minimum standard with respect to career progression prescriptions, in the sector. Now, unfortunately, like I said earlier, what we had was a situation whereby the MBTE took this document to the head of civil service of the Federation, and then we are contesting the fact that they don't have even the professional competence to handle such a document. And then what we have, in fact, we're having conflicting reports as of today. There's so much confusion. On the 25th, on the 15th of on the 11th of July, just a few days back, we saw another letter from the MBT writing to the head of civil service and classifying this same document as a draft. They are calling this same document a draft and calling for review before implementation. Now, this is a document you are calling a draft on the 11th of July. Meanwhile, on the 21st and on the 24th of June, you had already, written, circulars, asking institutions to implement. Are you now asking them to implement drafts that you have also identified as being deficient in certain, areas? So we don't know where the NBT is actually standing on this matter as we speak. Yesterday also, there was a press statement, an unsigned press statement from the National Board for Technical Education, where in an attempt again to shelve its responsibility in producing this particular document, are now saying that that the document is only meant for federal polytechnics. And we are taken aback. We are taken aback. What then are you going to use? What then are you going to use to regulate the states?
All right.
Or the private polytechnics? Or are you no longer their regulatory body as well? And so we want the MBTE to come clean on this matter.
Right.
What have they given to polytechnics? What are they selling at the cost of 10,000 naira per copy? What are they selling? Is it the approved scheme of service? Or is it a draft document? If it is a draft document, we have said, okay, make it clear that this is draft. Write the institutions that this is a draft, ask them to bring in their observations, and convene a stakeholders meeting so that we can discuss, these observations, right, so as to have a fine document.
So the dangers.
If it is not a draft, make it clear to us that it is not a draft. So you cannot be having, multiple speak, and there's no way MPT can say that it does not regulate state-owned institutions.
All right, Mr. Ezebe.
We have one standard.
Right.
We have one standard. The standards are national.
The dangers that I see ahead, one is the possibility of a strike, which will affect the academic calendar of the students and by extension, their academics and the overall turnout. Secondly, possible discrimination, which has been a major thorn in the flesh of, Polytechnic graduates for years now. And of course, this can spiral into much bigger things. So this is something we'll stay on. We'll see first how ASUP decides, at the end of this ultimatum, and then we'll see what the federal government has to say on this. But we'll have to thank you so much for giving some insight into this, Mr. Anderson Ezebe, former president of the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Just to run through some of the feedback we have from you. Very first one is on our conversation around the Japa syndrome in the health sector particularly. And Emmanuel, Iowa, says, bottom line is money. Just as simple as that. The salary in Nigeria for health workers is flimsy. Improve salaries and people will stay. Let me just edit your comment a bit and add management to it as well. So that's from Emmanuel, Iowa.
Well, Eka Dixon says, we've been hearing of Japa, but the wage bill has never reduced and new recruitments are not done. My nurse friend has been looking for work for years. What's happening? Is anyone benefiting from this Japa syndrome? Well,
so much to reflect on. There's a calling to patriotism, and that's valid, but remember, patriotism can never work on an empty stomach. Just for government to reflect on. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back again tomorrow with another bumper package. I am Bukola Koka.
And thank you very much. Also, I guess Kayode wants me to end this, but thank you for watching The Morning Brief. I am Anne Umawadu.
Well, Sunrise Daily is next. I'm back with the ladies tomorrow, so hey, watch out. I'm Kayode Kukilu. Have a great day.